I am an engineer and my boss demoted me to secretary duties because I am a woman. I organized his termination instead. I work as a structural engineer at a construction firm in Phoenix, and my boss keeps assigning me administrative tasks because women are just naturally better at these things. Started 8 months ago when I joined the team. 6 engineers, I'm the only woman. First it was small stuff. Order lunch for client meetings, make coffee before presentations, update the calendar. I thought maybe it was a new person thing. Then I noticed Kyle started 3 weeks after me and never got asked to do any of it. 2 months in, my boss Roger started with the notes. Every meeting, every client call, every site walkthrough. "Can you grab this one?" he'd say, already assuming I'd say yes. I was taking notes while presenting my own structural analysis last week. Try explaining load calculations while simultaneously writing down everyone else's questions. Roger said I should be able to handle it because women are great multitaskers, it's biological. That's when I started pushing back. Told him I couldn't present and take notes simultaneously. He said, "Sure you can. My wife does it all the time at her office." His wife is a kindergarten teacher. I design buildings that don't fall down. Different skill sets. The meeting was a disaster. I had to stop mid-calculation 3 times to write down client requests. Lost my train of thought. The client asked if I was new. Roger told them I was still learning to juggle everything. Been doing this for 5 years. Have a master's degree from MIT. But sure, still learning. After the meeting, Roger pulled me aside. "See, this is why you need more practice. Women usually pick this stuff up faster." "Pick what up? Taking notes while doing complex mathematics?" "The organizational stuff. You know, the soft skills. My job is structural engineering. That's a hard skill. But someone needs to handle the administrative side. So hire an administrator." "Why would we do that when you're here?" He assigned Kyle to take notes the next meeting just to prove his point. Kyle wrote down 3 bullet points in an hour-long discussion. Missed every action item, every deadline, every technical specification. Roger came to my desk immediately after. "Kyle's notes are useless. This is why I need you to do it." "Because Kyle's bad at it?" "Because you're better at it." "It's a compliment." "It's not a compliment. It's sexism." His face went red. "That's a strong word. I'm just utilizing people's natural strengths. What makes note-taking my natural strength? Come on, women are detail-oriented, organized, better at support tasks." "Support tasks? I'm a licensed engineer. Who should also be a team player?" That afternoon, he sent an email to the whole team. "Going forward, Grace will be handling all meeting notes and follow-up communications. She's shown a natural aptitude for organization." Natural aptitude. I have a natural aptitude for calculating whether buildings will collapse. 3 team members responded with, "Thanks, Grace," like I'd volunteered. Like this was my idea. I went to HR the next morning, filed a formal complaint about gender-based discrimination. The HR manager, a woman named Janet, sighed. He said you have a natural aptitude. That's not necessarily discriminatory. He said women are naturally better at administrative tasks. Did he put that in writing? No. Then it's hearsay. So nothing happens? I'll talk to him. Remind him about appropriate task distribution. Roger was ice cold after that. Stopped including me in technical discussions. Started introducing me to clients as our note-taker instead of our engineer. When I submitted my analysis for the Riverside project, he sent it back saying, "Focus on your assigned tasks first." My assigned task was apparently becoming a secretary with an engineering degree. 2 weeks later, bigger problem. Roger announced I'd be planning the office holiday party. "Since you're so good at organizing," he said in front of everyone. "That's not my job," I said. "It's whoever I assign it to," he replied. "And I'm assigning it to the person best suited for it. Because I'm a woman. Because you're organized. Stop making everything about gender." Kyle laughed. "Yeah, Grace, not everything is sexist." This from Kyle, who once asked me to explain my calculations 3 times because he couldn't believe they were right. The next day, Roger sent out another team email subject line. Holiday Party Planning Committee. Committee of 1. Me. Listed responsibilities included venue booking, catering, decorations, gift exchange coordination, and general festive oversight. Festive oversight, I have a master's degree. I responded to all. I decline this assignment as it's outside my job description and appears to be gender-based discrimination, given I'm the only team member ever asked to plan social events. Roger called me into his office immediately. Door closes behind me and he's already talking before I can sit down. He tells me I'm being insubordinate and unprofessional, that refusing assignments makes me look like I'm not a team player, that this attitude won't help my career here. I let him finish. Then I tell him I've documented everything, and I'm prepared to file another complaint if he continues assigning me work outside my job description based on gender stereotypes. His face goes even redder, but he dismisses me without another word. I walk straight back to my desk and email myself notes about the entire conversation, including the time, his exact words, and his visible anger. That's when things started changing. Roger assigned me the structural analysis for a new office building project the next morning. Actual engineering work. technical calculations, load-bearing assessments, material specifications. Everything I should have been doing all along. I forwarded the assignment email to my personal account with a timestamp. Then another project came 2 days later. Then another. He was clearly trying to establish a new pattern, make it look like he'd always been giving me real work. I documented every single assignment, noted the sudden change in his behavior, saved everything to a folder on my personal laptop. Elena called to check in, and I told her about Roger's behavior shift. She said it actually helped my case because it proved he knew his previous conduct was wrong and was trying to cover his tracks. The Riverside project presentation happened the following week. I'd finished my analysis weeks ago, but Roger had sent it back saying I should focus on my assigned tasks, meaning the note-taking and party planning. Now suddenly he wanted me to present to the client. I spent 3 days preparing, double-checking every calculation, building a clear visual presentation of the structural requirements. The meeting room had 12 people from the client's team, plus Roger, Kyle, and 2 other engineers from our side. I walked them through the load calculations, explained the foundation requirements for the soil conditions at the site, showed how the structural system would handle Phoenix's seismic requirements and extreme heat cycles. No one interrupted me to ask for notes. No one suggested I should be making coffee instead. Damon Hoover, the client's project director, asked detailed technical questions, and I answered everyone. The presentation took 45 minutes, and when I finished, Damon thanked me specifically for the thorough analysis. After everyone else left, Damon stopped me in the hallway. He said he wanted to request me as the lead engineer for their next project, a larger commercial development they were planning. Then he mentioned something that made me realize he'd been paying attention all along. He said he was surprised when Roger introduced me as the note-taker at a previous meeting, given how obvious my technical expertise was. I thanked him and said I'd be happy to work on the next project. Walking back to my desk, I understood what was happening. Damon had noticed Roger's treatment of me and was deliberately creating opportunities that forced Roger to recognize my actual role. 2 weeks into the investigation, Gavin called me into his office. He had a thick folder on his desk, papers sticking out from all sides. He told me they'd substantiated my discrimination complaint. Multiple people confirmed Roger treated me differently, assigned me administrative work he never gave to male engineers, made comments about women's natural abilities. The company was taking corrective action with Roger, implementing mandatory bias training for all managers, reviewing task assignment patterns across all departments. Then Gavin asked what outcome I was looking for. I didn't hesitate. I told him I wanted to do the job I was hired for without gender-based obstacles. I wanted to work on structural engineering projects, present to clients, use my MIT education, and 5 years of experience. I didn't want special treatment, just equal treatment. Gavin nodded and made notes. He said they were committed to making sure that happened. Roger got formally written up 3 days later. I heard about it through office gossip before I saw any official notice. He was placed on a performance improvement plan that specifically addressed appropriate task delegation and professional conduct. The plan was posted on the internal HR system where anyone could see the general outline without names. Roger came back from that meeting looking like he wanted to punch something, but he stayed quiet, kept his head down. He knew his job was on the line. That afternoon, a woman I'd barely spoken to stopped by my desk. Viola Stevenson, senior partner, probably 20 years older than me, wearing a sharp gray suit. She introduced herself and said she was impressed with my work on the Riverside project. She'd reviewed my technical analysis and thought it was excellent. We talked for maybe 10 minutes about structural engineering approaches, seismic design considerations, nothing about the discrimination complaint. She treated me like a colleague, like an engineer, like someone whose professional opinion mattered. The next week, Viola came back and asked if I'd be interested in transferring to her team. She said they focused on large commercial projects, had 3 other engineers, 2 of them women. It was technically a lateral move, same title and pay, but the projects were more complex and higher profile. I realized immediately what she was offering. An escape route from Roger without having to leave the company entirely. A chance to work somewhere my gender wouldn't be an obstacle. I met with Viola's team 2 days later. The conference room felt different from the first minute. The 2 women engineers, both with more experience than me, told me they'd heard what happened and respected how I handled it. One of them, an engineer who'd been with the company for 12 years, mentioned that Viola specifically built diverse teams and had a reputation for developing talent regardless of gender. The other engineers asked about my experience with different structural systems, what kinds of projects interested me, how I approached complex load calculations, real professional questions. No one asked if I was good at taking notes or planning parties. I accepted the transfer that afternoon and gave Roger 2 weeks' notice. He barely responded when I told him, just nodded once and turned back to his computer screen. Kyle looked uncomfortable, shifting in his chair and avoiding eye contact. Marco caught my eye and gave me a genuine smile. I started packing up my desk. 8 months of working in that space, and I felt lighter than I had in months. During my final week on Roger's team, the executive board sent a company-wide email announcing a review of management practices and workplace culture. The email specifically mentioned ensuring all employees can contribute their full expertise without barriers. I heard through office gossip that my case triggered a broader examination of how the firm operates, looking at task assignments and promotion patterns across all departments. On my last day with Roger's team, Marco pulled me aside near the coffee machine. He said he wanted to apologize for not speaking up sooner. He admitted he noticed the pattern, saw Roger treating me differently, but convinced himself it wasn't his place to get involved in other people's conflicts. I told him that speaking up during the investigation mattered, that his honest account helped substantiate the complaint. I encouraged him to say something immediately if he saw similar patterns in the future, not to wait until there was an official investigation. He promised he would. I started with Viola's team on Monday morning. Viola called me into her office and immediately assigned me to a major hospital expansion project that required complex structural calculations. The hospital was adding a 6-story patient tower and renovating 2 existing buildings, all while keeping the hospital operational. It was exactly the kind of challenging project I should have been doing all along. That afternoon, Viola took me to meet the client team at the hospital. She introduced me as their structural engineer, emphasized my MIT credentials and 5 years of experience, explained that I'd be the lead on all structural aspects of the expansion. No mention of note-taking abilities. No mention of coffee-making skills. No mention of party planning expertise. Just my actual qualifications and the technical work I was hired to do. The hospital project turned out to be exactly what I needed. 5 engineering firms working together on the expansion, and I was representing our company as the lead structural engineer. The existing hospital had to stay open during construction, which meant every calculation had to account for active patient care happening right above or below the work zones. I spent the first week reviewing the architectural plans and mapping out load paths for the new 6-story tower. The foundation work alone required 3 different soil reports and custom pile designs because the site had unstable clay layers. 15 feet down, I ran finite element analysis on the connection points between the new tower and the existing buildings, making sure the structural tie-ins would handle both static loads and seismic activity. Every morning, I woke up excited to dig into the calculations instead of dreading another day of being treated like an assistant. The other engineers on the project team treated me like a colleague, asking technical questions about my structural approach and incorporating my recommendations into their mechanical and electrical designs. No one asked me to take notes or plan anything except the structural systems that would keep the building standing for the next 50 years. 3 weeks into my new position, I got an email from Gavin asking if I would participate in developing a management training program. The company wanted to include real examples of workplace discrimination and how it affects employee performance. He explained they were bringing in an outside consulting firm to design the curriculum, but they needed someone willing to share their actual experience. I replied yes within an hour, seeing it as a chance to prevent other women from going through what I went through with Roger. Gavin set up a meeting for the following week with the consulting firm representatives. I met with Gavin and 2 consultants from a company that specializes in workplace culture training. We spent 3 hours going through my documentation, the emails Roger sent, the pattern of task assignments, and how his behavior changed after my first complaint. The consultants took detailed notes and asked specific questions about which incidents had the biggest impact on my ability to do my actual job. They wanted to understand not just what happened, but how it felt to be a licensed engineer treated like administrative support. We worked together over the next month to create case studies based on my experience, changing names and identifying details so it would not be obvious who the real people were. The training program included modules on unconscious bias, appropriate task delegation based on actual job descriptions, and recognizing retaliation when employees raise concerns. One section specifically addressed the difference between utilizing someone's skills and stereotyping based on gender. Another module covered how discrimination affects productivity and employee retention, using data from my months of diminished technical output while I was stuck taking notes and planning parties. It felt good to turn my frustrating experience into something educational that might actually change how managers think about task assignments. Meanwhile, Roger finished his performance improvement plan period. I heard through office gossip that he barely met the minimum requirements to avoid termination. Someone told me he was still assigning administrative tasks to his team, but now he distributed them more evenly across all the engineers instead of dumping everything on one person. It was not perfect, but it was better than the obvious discrimination he practiced before. Kyle apparently became the regular note-taker for team meetings, which seemed like justice given how he laughed when I called out the sexism Marco mentioned to me in the break room, that the team dynamic was different now. Less tension. Though Roger still micromanaged everyone's work. Viola called me into her office one afternoon and told me she was assigning me to present our hospital project proposal to the client's board of directors. The presentation would determine whether we got the contract for the full expansion, a multi-million-dollar project that would take 3 years to complete. She looked me directly in the eye and said she was giving me this opportunity because I was the best person for the job. She trusted my technical expertise and my ability to communicate complex engineering concepts to non-engineers. It was the first time a supervisor had evaluated me purely on my actual professional abilities instead of making assumptions based on my gender. I spent 2 weeks preparing the presentation, creating detailed slides that showed our structural approach, safety specifications, construction timeline, and cost projections. The morning of the presentation, I walked into the hospital boardroom with my laptop and a printed backup of every slide. 15 board members sat around the conference table, including the hospital administrator, the chief financial officer, and several doctors who would be working in the new tower. I presented for 45 minutes explaining how our structural design would minimize disruption to patient care, meet all seismic safety requirements, and come in under budget. The board asked tough questions about load calculations, construction sequencing, and contingency planning. I answered every question with specific technical details, referencing the engineering analysis I had personally performed. When the presentation ended, the project director stood up and told the board that my structural analysis was the most thorough he had seen in 20 years of healthcare construction. He said my attention to detail in the safety specifications gave him complete confidence in our firm's ability to handle the project. The board voted to approve our proposal that same day. Viola pulled me aside afterward and said this was the kind of work that builds a career, not just completes a project. She told me she was planning to involve me in business development for future projects because clients responded well to my combination of technical expertise and clear communication. My performance review came up the following month, and Viola gave me a significant raise. She explained that it reflected both my technical contributions to the hospital project and my leadership in helping develop the management training program. The executive board had specifically noted my value to the company when approving the salary increase. After 8 months of being treated like an overeducated secretary, getting compensated appropriately for my actual engineering work felt like validation that I had made the right choice to fight back, instead of just accepting Roger's discrimination. The company-wide management training program launched in early fall, with attendance mandatory for all supervisors and team leads. I heard mixed feedback through the office grapevine. Some managers took it seriously and started examining their own task assignment patterns. Others treated it as a box-checking exercise, sitting through the modules but not really engaging with the content. But several women from other departments reached out to me privately, sending emails or stopping by my desk to say thank you. They told me the training gave them language to describe experiences they had been having, but did not know how to articulate. One woman said she had been planning to quit because her manager kept assigning her party planning duties, but after the training she felt equipped to push back with specific references to appropriate task delegation. 2 months after the training program launched, I heard that Roger's team was falling apart. 2 engineers left within 3 months of each other, both citing management issues in their exit interviews. The executive board decided to assign Viola to temporarily oversee his team while they evaluated his future with the company. She called me into her office and asked if I would help mentor the remaining engineers and ensure project continuity during the transition. It put me in an interesting position, having authority over the situation I had escaped from just months earlier. I started meeting with the engineers from Roger's former team, reviewing their current projects and talking through any challenges they were facing. What I discovered was that they were all competent engineers who had been micromanaged and poorly utilized under Roger's leadership. Marco turned out to be excellent at complex calculations, the kind of advanced structural analysis that requires both mathematical skill and creative problem-solving. But Roger had never given him challenging assignments, keeping him stuck on basic tasks that did not use his full capabilities. I worked with Viola to redistribute the project work based on people's actual skills and interests, rather than Roger's arbitrary assignments within a few weeks. Team morale improved noticeably. The engineers started collaborating better, sharing technical knowledge and producing higher quality work. Marco told me it felt like he was finally doing the job he had been hired for, instead of being held back by a manager who did not recognize talent when he saw it. The hospital project moved into construction phase 3 weeks later, and I started making regular site visits to check that the structural elements matched my specifications. The construction foreman, a guy who had been working in the industry for 30 years, treated me like any other engineer from the first day. He walked me through the foundation work, pointing out where they had reinforced the load-bearing walls exactly as I had designed them. He asked questions about the steel beam placement for the second floor and wanted my input on a minor adjustment. The concrete crew suggested, no comments about women in construction, no surprise that I understood the technical details, just professional respect based on my actual knowledge. It reminded me that Roger's attitude was not normal or required in this field. Plenty of people in construction could work with women engineers without making it weird or difficult. The foreman called me directly when they hit an unexpected soil condition that might affect the foundation depth, asking me to come review the situation before they proceeded. I spent 2 hours on site that day, recalculating load distribution and approving a modified foundation design that would work with the actual ground conditions. The foreman thanked me for the quick response and told his crew to implement my revised specifications. Working with people who valued my engineering skills instead of focusing on my gender felt like breathing clean air after months in a stuffy room. Viola nominated me for a professional development program 2 weeks after that site visit. The program sponsored promising engineers to pursue extra certifications and leadership training, and she said my technical work and client relationships made me an ideal candidate. I filled out the application, submitted my project portfolio, and got accepted along with 5 other engineers from various firms around Phoenix. The program included mentorship from senior engineers, advanced technical courses in structural analysis and business skills training about project management and client development. It positioned participants for senior engineering roles and potential partnership tracks. The first session was an all-day workshop on advanced seismic design, taught by an engineer who had worked on major buildings in California. I took pages of notes on new calculation methods and met 2 other women engineers who were dealing with similar workplace challenges at their firms. We exchanged contact information and agreed to stay in touch throughout the program. 6 months after my transfer to Viola's team, the executive board made their decision about Roger. His contract came up for review in April, and they decided not to renew it. They offered him the option to resign instead of being terminated, which he took within a week. The official announcement said he was pursuing other opportunities, but everyone in the office knew what really happened. His pattern of discrimination, the failed team dynamics, the engineer turnover, and the formal investigation all added up to a manager the company did not want to keep. His team got permanently reassigned under Viola's supervision, and she immediately started working to rebuild morale and redistribute the project workload. I heard through Marco that Roger cleaned out his desk on a Friday afternoon and left without saying goodbye to anyone. Some people felt bad for him, but I mostly felt relieved that no other woman engineer would have to deal with his gender-based task assignments. The company asked me to help interview candidates for Roger's replacement, giving me direct input into who would manage my former team. We reviewed applications from 12 candidates and interviewed 5. The third interview was with a woman who had 15 years of experience in structural engineering and had managed teams at 2 different firms. She talked specifically about collaborative management styles and her commitment to developing junior engineers regardless of their background. During the interview, she mentioned facing similar discrimination early in her career at a firm in Texas, where her boss kept assigning her administrative work, while male colleagues got technical projects. She said that experience made her determined to create fair work environments where people got evaluated on their actual engineering skills. I asked her how she would handle a situation where a team member complained about gender-based task assignments. She gave a detailed answer about immediate investigation, documentation review, task redistribution, and creating transparent assignment processes so everyone could see the work distribution was fair. We hired her 2 days later. The new manager started in May and asked everyone to call her by her first name from day 1. She spent her first week meeting individually with each team member, reviewing their current projects and asking about their career goals. Then she redistributed administrative tasks across the entire team on a rotating schedule, so everyone took turns with meeting notes, client follow-up emails, and project coordination work. She recognized technical contributions publicly in team meetings, specifically praising people's engineering work rather than their organizational skills. She created mentorship pairs where senior engineers worked directly with junior staff on complex calculations. Marco told me it felt like working at a completely different company, where his technical abilities finally mattered more than his willingness to stay quiet. Even Kyle admitted he never realized how toxic Roger's management style was until he experienced an alternative approach that actually developed people's skills instead of pigeonholing them into narrow roles. My hospital project won a Regional Engineering Excellence Award in June. The industry association sent a letter saying the structural design showed innovative solutions for healthcare facility challenges, particularly the way I had designed the support systems to allow for future expansion without compromising the existing structure. They invited me to accept the award at their annual conference in July. Viola attended with me, and we spent 2 days networking with engineers from other firms who wanted to hear about the project's technical details. I presented the structural calculations and design process to a room of about 80 engineers, explaining how I had solved the load distribution problems for the building's unusual footprint. Several people came up afterward to ask questions about my methodology, and 3 different firms mentioned they were looking for experienced structural engineers if I ever wanted to explore other opportunities. It was flattering even though I was happy working with Viola's team. The recognition felt like proof that fighting Roger's discrimination, instead of just accepting it or quietly leaving, had been the right choice. The professional development program connected me with a mentor in August, a senior structural engineer at a major firm in California. She had 30 years of experience and had faced her own battles with gender discrimination throughout her career. We talked on the phone for an hour about her path from junior engineer to partner, including the times she had to push back against managers who tried to limit her technical work. She offered strategic advice about career advancement, explaining which certifications would be most valuable, how to build client relationships that led to repeat business, and when to negotiate for better project assignments. Having someone who understood both the technical challenges and the political aspects of the profession was incredibly valuable. She told me to stay in touch and offered to review my project portfolio when I was ready to pursue the next promotion. Viola called me into her office in September for my performance review. She told me I was promoted to senior engineer, which came with project leadership responsibilities and a significant salary increase. The promotion recognized my technical contributions on the hospital project, my strong client relationships, and my leadership in mentoring other engineers. She said the executive board specifically approved the raise and noted my value to the company. The senior engineer title put me on track for associate partnership within a few years if I continued performing at this level. I thanked her for the opportunity and the mentorship she had provided since my transfer. She said I had earned it through consistently excellent work, and she was already planning to assign me as lead engineer on an upcoming commercial development project that would be the largest in the firm's history. The company asked me to speak at their recruiting events at engineering schools in October. They specifically wanted to target women students who might be considering careers in structural engineering. I visited 2 universities and gave honest presentations about my experience, including the discrimination I had faced with Roger, and how the company ultimately supported me in addressing it. I talked about the importance of documentation, knowing your rights, and finding mentors who valued your technical skills. Several students came up afterward to ask questions, and 3 women told me my honesty about the challenges made them more interested in the firm, not less, because it showed the company took discrimination seriously when it was reported properly. One student said she had been considering switching out of engineering after a bad internship experience, but hearing that it was possible to fight back and win made her want to stay in the field. Viola assigned me to mentor 2 junior engineers in November, 1 woman and 1 man, who just joined her team straight out of their engineering programs. I made a point of giving them both challenging technical assignments from the start, reviewing their calculations, and providing detailed feedback on their work. The woman told me after her first month that she specifically requested to work on my team after hearing about my reputation for excellent project work and fair treatment. She said her friends at other firms were already getting stuck with administrative tasks, while male colleagues got the interesting engineering problems. I told her that would not happen on my team, and I meant it. A few weeks later, Elena called my cell phone during lunch. She asked if I had time to talk about something outside my case. 2 women engineers from different construction firms had contacted her after hearing about my situation through industry connections. Both faced similar problems with male bosses assigning them administrative work, while male coworkers got technical projects. Elena wanted to know if I would be willing to meet with them and share how I built my documentation case. I said yes immediately. If my experience could help other women avoid hiring a lawyer or know their rights, that seemed worth doing. Elena set up a meeting for the following week at a coffee shop downtown. The first woman worked at a firm in Tempe and had been taking meeting notes for 8 months while male engineers with less experience led client presentations. The second woman was at a smaller company in Scottsdale where her boss kept asking her to order supplies and plan office events. I brought copies of my documentation timeline and walked them through exactly what I tracked. Every email that assigned administrative tasks, every meeting where I was introduced incorrectly, every project I should have led but didn't, every comment about women being naturally better at organization or multitasking. I explained how I time-stamped everything and forwarded emails to my personal account as backup. The woman from Tempe started taking notes on her phone, asking specific questions about how to phrase an HR complaint. The woman from Scottsdale looked relieved just hearing that someone else had experienced the same thing. She said she thought maybe she was being too sensitive or not a team player. I told her that was exactly what Roger wanted me to think, and it was garbage. After 2 hours, the Tempe woman decided to file an internal complaint using my approach. She planned to document everything for another month first to build a stronger pattern. The Scottsdale woman said she was going to leave her firm entirely. She had another job offer from a company with better reviews about treating women fairly, and she realized she didn't want to fight this battle if she had other options. Both thanked me for helping them see they weren't crazy and had real grounds for action. I gave them my number and told them to reach out if they needed anything else. The hospital project reached completion in early December. Final inspections showed everything built exactly to specifications. No structural issues, no safety concerns, no budget overruns. The construction finished 2 weeks ahead of schedule, which almost never happens with projects that size. The client sent an email to our entire firm praising the structural engineering design and noting how the solid foundation work prevented delays during the building phase. 3 days later, the hospital system contacted our firm about bidding on their next expansion project. The email specifically requested me as lead structural engineer. They wanted the same quality and reliability they got on the first project. Viola forwarded me the request with a note saying, "This kind of client loyalty was what built a real career. When clients asked for you by name, that meant they trusted your work enough to stake their projects on it." The new hospital expansion would be even bigger than the first one, with more complex structural requirements. I started reviewing the preliminary plans immediately. In January, I got an invitation to join a professional organization for women in engineering. One of the women I met through Elena had recommended me for membership. The group held an annual conference in San Diego every February with workshops, networking events, and presentations from women working in different engineering fields. I registered and booked my flight. The conference had over 300 attendees. Women structural engineers, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, civil engineers, some just starting their careers, others with decades of experience. Every single one had stories about being the only woman on a team or dealing with bosses who assumed they should handle administrative work. Meeting that many women who understood exactly what I had dealt with felt incredibly validating. I wasn't an outlier or someone making problems where none existed. This was a widespread pattern that women across the industry navigated constantly. I exchanged contact information with a structural engineer from Seattle who specialized in earthquake-resistant design, another from Denver working on bridge projects, and a third from Austin doing commercial high-rises. We created a group chat to share project challenges and job opportunities. Having professional connections outside my own firm gave me a broader perspective on the industry. Back at the office, I heard updates about my former team through Marco. The new manager had completely changed how the team operated. Project assignments went to whoever had the right skills and availability, regardless of gender. Administrative tasks rotated fairly among everyone. Team meetings focused on technical problem solving, instead of Roger's constant criticism. 2 engineers who had been planning to leave decided to stay. Marco himself got promoted to senior engineer in March, a recognition he deserved but never received under Roger. He stopped by my desk to tell me the news and thank me for exposing the problems that had been holding everyone back. He said having fair management let him finally show what he could actually do instead of staying quiet to avoid Roger's anger. The company released their annual report in April. The executive board included a section about diversity and inclusion metrics, showing improvement across multiple measures. More women in leadership positions, better retention rates for women engineers, increased participation in professional development programs. The report specifically mentioned the cultural shift over the past year and committed to ongoing efforts to ensure fair treatment for all employees. It wasn't perfect, and I knew some of the problems still existed in other departments, but it represented real progress that benefited everyone. Viola called me into her office in May. She told me she was recommending me for associate partner track, which would make me one of the youngest engineers at the firm to reach that level. The partnership committee would review my project portfolio and client relationships over the next 6 months before making a final decision. She said my work on the hospital projects, my strong client loyalty, and my leadership in mentoring junior engineers made me an excellent candidate. This was the kind of career advancement I hoped for when I joined the firm, finally happening based on my actual engineering work, instead of my supposed natural aptitude for party planning. In June, I got assigned to lead a team of 5 engineers on a major commercial development project. The client wanted a mixed-use building with retail space, offices, and residential units, which required complex structural design to handle different load requirements on different floors. Leading the team gave me direct management experience that would matter for the partnership review. I implemented all the fair practices I wished Roger had used. Technical work and administrative tasks both got distributed fairly based on who had time and relevant skills. I recognized everyone's contributions in client meetings and internal reports. When someone did excellent work, I made sure they got credit for it. The team worked well together and produced strong results. One of my mentees from Viola's team won an award in August for her structural design on a difficult renovation project. The building was a historic property that needed earthquake retrofitting without changing the exterior appearance. She had figured out an innovative solution using internal bracing that met modern safety codes while preserving the original architecture. At the award ceremony, she thanked me publicly for giving her the opportunity to tackle complex work early in her career instead of sticking her with simple projects until she had more experience. Watching her succeed reminded me why fighting Roger's discrimination had been worth it. I could have just tolerated the situation or quietly left for another job, but pushing back had created change that helped other people beyond just myself. The professional development program I had been attending concluded in September with a capstone project. Each participant had to present advanced techniques in their specialty area to the other engineers in the program. I chose to present new structural analysis methods for high-rise buildings in seismic zones, incorporating recent research about how different materials responded to earthquake forces. The presentation went well, and afterward, 2 of the program instructors asked if I would be interested in teaching similar workshops at engineering conferences. They said the industry needed more experts willing to share advanced technical knowledge, and my presentation style made complex topics accessible. I agreed and got added to the speaker list for 3 upcoming conferences. Building a reputation as a technical expert opened doors that administrative task assignments never would have. In October, I heard through an industry contact that Roger took a position at a smaller construction firm in Tucson. My contact mentioned the company had a reputation for old-school management, and hardly any women in technical roles. I felt relieved knowing he was someone else's problem now, and hoped their HR department had better oversight than ours did initially. The Diversity and Inclusion Committee asked me to join in November, wanting to use my experience to help shape company policies. We spent the next 3 months implementing transparent project assignment processes, where managers had to justify their decisions in writing. Regular management training became mandatory every quarter, covering bias recognition and fair delegation practices. We created clear channels for reporting discrimination that bypassed immediate supervisors and went straight to the executive board. The goal was making my experience rare instead of something other women might face in the future. The hospital client reached out directly in December about a major expansion project. They wanted me as the lead structural engineer for their entire health system's growth plan over the next 5 years. The contract was worth millions in fees, and represented the kind of long-term client relationship that partnership committees noticed. I met with the client's planning board, and they specifically mentioned choosing me because of my technical reputation and the innovative solutions I'd developed on their previous project. When I told Viola about the contract, she smiled and said this was exactly what the partnership review committee looked for. The project was mine because I'd earned their trust through excellent engineering work, not despite being a woman in a male-dominated field. I attended a national engineering conference in February, where I served on a panel about innovative structural solutions in healthcare facilities. Another panelist mentioned hearing about an award-winning hospital project in Phoenix and asked me to describe the design approach. I explained the seismic retrofitting techniques we'd used and the load distribution solutions for the multi-story addition. Several audience members asked follow-up questions about the calculations, and one requested my contact information to discuss similar projects. Being recognized as a technical expert in healthcare facility design felt like validation of every choice I'd made in handling Rogers' discrimination. The partnership committee completed their review in March and called me into a meeting with 3 senior partners. They offered me associate partnership, making me the youngest person to reach that level at the firm, and only the 3rd woman in the company's 40-year history. The announcement they sent to all staff included specific recognition of my technical excellence, strong client relationships, and leadership in improving company culture through the diversity committee work. Everything I'd worked for since graduating from MIT was happening based purely on merit and documented achievement. I scheduled a meeting with Elena to review the partnership agreement terms before signing anything. She went through the compensation package line by line, pointing out areas where I could negotiate for better terms. The profit-sharing structure was substantial, and I'd have authority to select my own projects and clients going forward. I'd also get a voice in firm strategy decisions and could mentor junior engineers without needing approval from other partners. I signed the agreement thinking about how different this outcome was from Roger calling me a note-taker and assigning me party planning duties less than 2 years ago. My first decision as a partner was sponsoring 2 women engineering students through their final year at Arizona State. Both were talented students with strong technical skills who were considering leaving engineering after experiencing discrimination during internships at other firms. I covered their tuition and provided regular mentorship meetings, where we discussed both technical problems and workplace navigation strategies. I wanted them to see that staying in the field and fighting for fair treatment could lead to real success and career advancement. Viola announced her retirement in May after 40 years in the construction industry. The firm hosted a celebration where multiple people gave speeches crediting her with changing the company culture around diversity and merit-based advancement. She'd mentored dozens of engineers over her career and fought for fair treatment long before it was common in the industry. She pulled me aside during the reception and said she was proud of how I'd handled a difficult situation and turned it into an opportunity to improve things for everyone. Her mentorship had made all the difference in my career path, and I told her I planned to do the same for the next generation of women engineers. My MIT Alumni Association invited me to speak at their annual engineering event in June about career development and workplace advocacy. I told Roger's discrimination story honestly, including the frustration and self-doubt I'd felt when HR initially dismissed my complaint. But I emphasized that documenting everything carefully and using proper channels had ultimately worked and led to meaningful change at my firm. Several alumni approached me afterwards saying that hearing a realistic success story instead of a perfect fairy tale gave them hope for handling their own workplace situations. The Hospital System Expansion Project won a National Engineering Award in July for innovative structural design in healthcare facilities. My team of 5 engineers traveled to the ceremony together, and we accepted the award on stage. As a group, I made sure to recognize each person's specific contributions during my acceptance speech, naming the engineers who developed key solutions for the seismic requirements and load calculations. Standing on that stage as a partner in my firm, leading excellent engineers on meaningful projects, I realized I hadn't just survived Roger's discrimination, I'd built something better, because of how I chose to fight it, instead of quietly accepting unfair treatment or leaving for another job. A national engineering magazine contacted me 3 months after the partnership announcement, asking for an interview about my career path and addressing workplace discrimination. The editor said they wanted to feature stories about engineers who'd created positive change in the industry. I agreed on the condition that they could verify everything with my firm and include the systemic improvements we'd made, not just my individual story. The interview happened over 2 phone calls where I walked through Roger's discrimination, the documentation process, how the firm responded once proper channels were used, and the policy changes that resulted. The article ran in their spring issue with the headline, "Building Better: How One Engineer Turned Discrimination into Industry Change." It included quotes from Viola about the importance of addressing bias, and from Gavin about implementing effective reporting systems. The magazine sent me advance copies and I braced myself for negative attention, but the response was overwhelmingly positive. My firm's recruiting team said they got a spike in applications from qualified women engineers, specifically mentioning the article. 3 other construction firms reached out, asking about our training program and diversity policies. Industry conference organizers invited me to speak on panels about workplace culture, The article sparked actual conversations about improving how engineering firms operate, instead of just accepting discrimination as normal. My former team under the new manager kept doing excellent work, and 3 engineers from that group got promoted within the year. Marco sent me an email in late fall saying congratulations on the magazine article and thanking me again. He wrote that my willingness to fight Roger's behavior instead of quietly leaving had created opportunities for everyone on the team to advance based on actual merit rather than whoever Roger personally liked. The new manager evaluated people on their engineering work and gave challenging projects to whoever had the right skills, regardless of gender or personal relationships. Marco said he'd been promoted to senior engineer and was finally getting to work on the complex projects he'd wanted for years. He ended the email saying the systemic change mattered more than any individual outcome, which meant a lot coming from someone who'd witnessed everything. I wrote back congratulating him on the promotion and saying I was glad the team was thriving under fair management. Hearing that the improvements lasted and benefited everyone made the whole difficult process feel worthwhile. I hired 2 new engineers for my project team in the winter, deliberately selecting candidates based solely on technical qualifications and potential. The interview process focused on their structural engineering knowledge, problem-solving approaches, and interest in healthcare facility design. One candidate was a woman who'd graduated from UC Berkeley 2 years earlier and had strong technical skills but seemed hesitant during the interview. When I asked about her career goals, she mentioned she'd left her previous firm after 6 months due to gender discrimination and was worried about finding a company that would let her actually do engineering work. I told her honestly that our firm took those issues seriously, had mandatory bias training, clear reporting channels, and systems in place to address discrimination when it happened. I explained that I'd personally experienced gender discrimination here, and the company had ultimately supported me in addressing it, leading to real policy changes. Her whole demeanor changed, and she started asking detailed questions about the projects we were working on and the team structure. She accepted the offer enthusiastically 2 days later and started the following month. Having the ability to tell a discrimination survivor that our firm genuinely addressed these problems instead of ignoring them felt like proof that fighting Roger had created something lasting. 5 years after that meeting in Roger's office where he tried to make me plan the holiday party, I'm leading the largest project in the firm's history with a team of 12 engineers working under my direction. We're designing a complex mixed-use development that will define Phoenix's skyline for decades, combining residential towers, commercial space, and public areas with challenging structural requirements. Every morning I review calculations, make design decisions, present solutions to clients, and guide my team through technical problems. The project requires innovative approaches to seismic load distribution and wind resistance at heights Phoenix hasn't built before. My team includes 6 women and 6 men, all selected because they're excellent engineers who can handle sophisticated structural analysis. I assign work based on who has the right expertise and who needs to develop specific skills, never based on gender or assumptions about natural abilities. When clients visit the site, I introduce my team members by their engineering specialties and the aspects of the project they're leading. Every structural calculation I approve, every client presentation I give, every leadership decision I make proves that fighting discrimination wasn't just about defending myself. It was about claiming the career I earned through education and hard work, and opening doors for everyone who comes after me so they don't have to fight the same battles I did.